you say a veteran, I really grew up in contact centers. So I walked into my first contact center when I was 16. And so I learned a lot of techniques of how to make friends quick, how to think on your feet, how to become a chameleon, adapt to situations. And right when I got on the phone, that was magic. I got to the point where I was super burnt out. COVID hit. I had to take 5 or 6 contact centers and make them all remote. I was going through an election season and I was doing political fundraising. So really everything came to kind of a head where I said, bro, you're 44 years old. Are you going to have and be able to drive this call center operations for the next 20 years? I was the guy buying technology all those years. And now I have an opportunity with NobleBiz to be able to marry that experience in with a product that's really good for that industry. And it was magic to where I understood at such a deeper level. What makes me super excited is this next version of contact centers, which is how do we merge AI, offshore, onshore, and give the customer what they're looking for.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to First Contact Stories of the Call Center, the podcast that dives deep into the minds of leaders reshaping the customer experience industry one story at a time. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Our guest is actually not only a veteran of the contact center space, but he's actually one of our own working here at NobleBiz. Now, Mike is the CRO at the business. He has over 26 years, though, in the trenches of BPOs, fundraising, tech-driven companies. And he also brings a strategic approach and vision to not only frontline experience, but also into the revenue generation side. He's scaled businesses, companies, unified teams, and has built revenue engines. So we're excited to have him on the show. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Christian. Excited to be here. I've been obviously a follower of the show, previous guest. I think it's amazing to hear other people's stories about how they, found contact centers. I always say found because we didn't grow up looking to be in this space. So I'm excited and happy to share with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of times when we bring on guests, we always talk about this idea of how people got into the industry. And they, like you said, we don't wake up and just go, when I grow up, I'm going to do this. And I know you have a very deep and interesting story when it comes to this. So I'd love for our audience to hear it. And let's get into a great conversation. So how did you get into the space, man?
Yeah, it's wild. So, when you say a veteran, I really grew up in contact centers. So I walked into my first contact center when I was 16. My dad was like, hey, there's this new company that came into town. I think it's some type of phone operators. And if you are, my age, you understand what that means. Some people don't. But the idea is I was just going to be able to be like a switchboard. Right? You just say, hey, you need to call somebody. Let me get you on, contact with them, so on and so forth. Well, it was a little different. I walked in and think the movie Boiler Room, right? People standing up, hollering, and I'm 16, right? So this was a little intimidating. And the company at the time was a fundraising company. So it was very loud and it was really ran by some people from New Jersey. So let's set the setting. Parsons, Kansas, town of about 8,000 people, mainly industrial farming community. To now there's these 5, 6 New Jersey type people opening this call center in this town. So very different kind of organization, very different type of people. And, I didn't know if this was going to be the right fit for me. And so the guy that was there running the call center, Joe Wagner, good friend of mine still today, hollered over to me in his most New Jersey voice, hey, you, come here. And so I was like, okay. I walked over there. He's like, can you read? And I'm like, yeah, I can read. And he's like, all right, read this. And no, read it louder. So I read it. It was just a script. And he goes, can you work till 9? It's like 3:30. And I'm like, sure. He's like, all right, there's my buddy Glenn. He's doing a training class. Go get in there. Training class was 45 minutes. If they say this, you say that. If they say this, you say that. So anyways, long story short, I jump on the phones and I'm a complete disaster. First thing that pops up, I'm like, hello, Jesus? And the guy laughs and hangs up on me. And so not a good start to the career I'm in today. So I was going to leave. It was break time. I was going to sneak out the back door and just be out of here. And this guy, 6'5", 300-pound Carl Edwards, was a middle linebacker from Maryland, was like, hey, what are you doing? And, I had to think quick. I was like, hey, man, I'm going to go get a smoke. He's like, dude, you're a kid. You're not smoking. You're leaving, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. He's like, come here, man. What are you talking about? This is all about, the way you sound. And, so anyways, he got me back in and I was great at it. And, I always tell people that I think I was born to do call centers. And people are like, what do you mean by that? Well, when I grew up, I went to 22 different schools before I went to high school. And so I learned a lot of techniques of how to make friends quick, how to think on your feet, how to become a chameleon, adapt to situations. And right when I got on the phone, that was magic. I could use all those skills that I learned growing up to make a quick connection with somebody, to be able to adapt to them. And then I've just used those type of techniques throughout the years of growing in a call center to manage other call center agents and managers. Because again, adapt, make friends quickly, be able to motivate them and try to reinstill things that are going to be important to them. And then be able to also teach them how to do the things that I did on the phone. So that was kind of my journey. It was a fundraising. I worked in that industry for about 11 years. I opened 8 different call centers throughout the U.S. We grew very quickly from 6 call centers to like 38 within like this 10-year period. And a lot of our job was to go to the Kentuckys, the West Virginias, the Ohios, and open these 60 to 100 seat call centers, be there from 6 months to a year, turn over management to the internal staff that we hired, and then go do it again, and then go do it again. And so that's how I got my start. I've been in it ever since. Once I left there, I did collections and some other things, president of multiple BPOs. And now today I'm at NobleBiz on the technology side of contact centers, which I used for the past 30 years.
Well, look, for anyone who says that they haven't gone, from one end of being an agent and then going all the way to the other end, you've made an interesting pivot, right? Not everybody goes through the call center space and then eventually works on the tech side, the vendor side. So what made that pivot? And now when you take that pivot and you say, okay, you've been not only successful at it, but you've been successful in building teams around this idea. How did you make that pivot? And then from there, can anybody make that pivot? Or what is it that really made that pivot successful from going from the ops side to the tech side?
It's interesting because right around 2019, 2020, I was really doing 2 full-time jobs. I was a president of a BPO, and I was also director of operations of a fundraising company. And I did this for like 3 or 4 years. I mean, I was burning on both. It was really challenging. But at that time, I had 2 full-time incomes, and it was great financially. But I got to the point where I was super burnt out. COVID hit. I had to take 5 or 6 contact centers and make them all remote. I was going through an election season and I was doing political fundraising. So really everything came to kind of a head where I said, bro, you're 44 years old. Are you going to have and be able to drive this call center operations for the next 20 years? Is this, the energy and the output and what you want to do? So, I really had to look internal and say, hey, what's the next step? Remember, I've done this since I was 16. So to tell me that I'm going to go sell cars or go into insurance just wasn't fathomable. I'm like, I don't know anything else besides call centers and contact centers. So I started, looking, started thinking, reached out to a guy named George Suriakis. He's actually president of NobleBiz, and at the time was COO or something, whatever. And he's like, hey, you know, we're hiring. And I was like, okay, what do you do? Like, I'm looking at NobleBiz. I'm like, I know you guys from Local Touch. You were a carrier of some of my call centers and some of my clients. And so he's like, you know, I think you would do good at this. He goes, I think you know the contact center space better than anybody I know. I think you have used most technologies out there, so you understand the urgency of what this tech does in a contact center. And you've sold your whole life, right? So every contact center I've ever ran has had some type of sales. So I've trained hundreds of thousands of agents and inside, outside, all different types of agents. So he said, you know that part. So you marry it all together and voila, you can make the pivot. So, you know, it's funny because I was obviously talking to you as well as somebody that was running the team and hiring for that position. And that was always the challenge that even me and you talked about was, how do you make the pivot of running, managing, operating a contact center to now offering solutions, helping, you know, fix problems and offering technology to them. And, you know, I think we came up with a good formula. And, you know, it's something that I used. And I said, listen, I made a deal to myself. I said, I'm going to give myself 6 months. I'm going to put my head down. I'm not going to look at any other job offers. I'm going to give this everything I have for 6 months. After 6 months, I'm going to bring my head up and I'm going to say, is this or isn't this the right path? I don't know if that was enough time. I don't know if it was too much time, but that's the deal I made to myself. And so with your help, especially on the telecom side, helping me connect the dots, and then what I already knew about contact centers, it was like magic, right? It was like the time that, you know, when I walked into a call center and I realized all the stuff that I did as a kid, all the moving and all that type of stuff was actually training for what I was about to do on the phones. And so it was the same type of scenario to where I'm saying, I know the contact centers. I was the guy buying technology all those years. And now I have an opportunity with NobleBiz to be able to marry that experience in with a product that's really, you know, good for that industry. And it just was, it was magic to where I understood at such a deeper level when I talked to these owners and these directors of the actual ROI and the issues and the turnover and all the challenges that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And when you can talk that level of being able to talk about all their challenges and then marry that with the solution, so much different than just saying, hey, I got this shiny object. I think this will help you, so on and so forth. So that's how I got into NobleBiz. You know, I wouldn't say it was an accident, but it was kind of, you know, me looking for a change because I was kind of burnt out, and then finding something that I could use all those years of experience from running the contact centers to, you know, help elevate me into this next chapter.
You know, it's interesting because you kind of gave yourself a time period and a goal. It wasn't like you were just going to take it day by day or just whatever happens. You had this approach saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give it my all. I'm not going to dip my toe in and hope for the best, or, oh, the water's cold, I'm going to jump back out of this pool. You're like, I'm going to go head in. I'm going to get this rolling and we'll see what happens, right? I'm going to put everything I have. The other piece of it, though, that is interesting is for anybody out there that has an operations hat on today and has been doing it forever, and maybe that's, like you said, it's all you knew and you wanted to get out. What advice would you give to somebody who says, I want to make a pivot? Forget going technically into, like, let's say tech sales or into the vendor side of it, but if they want to get out and go do something else and leverage what their experience has given them, but maybe in a parallel or, you know, perpendicular path, what would you give as advice to them?
All I can really do is look at what I went through and kind of the experience that I had. And one, I had to make the decision that this is what I wanted to do. Because, I multiple times in my career, I've kind of been at this junction where I'm like, okay, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do next? And so the part of being all in is really the whole missing piece. The other thing is I had to really internally say that I'm actually ready to take on something different. It's a change. And it wasn't out of necessity of I needed a job, because I already had 2 jobs, right? So it wasn't a case that I'm just financially unemployed. And so now I'm like, oh, let's make this pivot because now I have an opportunity. It was, I had enough pain internally at this point to say, hey, I'm ready to go do this. So I would say that's the first thing is, are you making a decision to pivot because you just need a job and this is available? Then I would say that could be, it could still work, but it could be more of a challenge to stick with it. Or do you honestly feel like this is that next chapter that you want to go down? And only you internally will know that. And because when you learn something new, but you've been the expert before of everything else, that's challenging. It's almost like starting over a little bit. You have to be open to, I'm not the guy making the calls. I'm not the guy deciding what we're going to do here. I'm not the guy that everybody's looking to move the company forward or make payroll or whatever those things are that I had in my past, where I built up to that level where I knew the industry so well. I knew what I was doing, that I was the shot caller. I was the guy telling people, this is what's going to be, and was successful at it. So when I started over, I went back to school, right? It was like, I'm back in high school, sitting in the desk going, okay, I got to learn. Okay, now I got to be able to take what I learned and put it into practice. Where before it was just second nature, right? Like I did it so long, it was just like second nature. It was you just impulsively could do it without even thinking about it. Now it was, okay, I got to practice. I got to role play. So I would say, if you're looking to pivot or you want to, try to look at something like I did, you have to be open to going back to school. You have to be open to learning again. And I think that's a huge challenge with people that's done the same thing for 25, 30 years, to almost let go a little bit, trust other people, trust that they know what they're talking about, absorb that, and then take some of your knowledge that you have before, take what they give you, and then create that in your own process. So that was my journey and how I pivoted. But I think it was interesting because I also had people to help me, like you and Steve and some other people that, really was pushing for me to make this work. It wasn't just, oh, well, it's Mike McGuire and, he really doesn't know this, business very well. It was like, what can we learn from Mike? We sell to Mike every day. What can we do to adapt some of our processes in the way that we go after clients? And so that also made me really feel like, being a big part of the team, which also gave me the energy to want to go out and do more and be able to, wear the banner or talk to people about how, this company's different. So that was kind of my journey. And the way I made that pivot to NobleBiz.
You said something a little while ago about I was the buyer. I'm the one buying these solutions, and leveraging that experience has helped you in your pivot. But let's kind of focus on all the people that buy today and the people that sell to those people.
Yeah.
With that lens, what are the biggest reasons when you went to buy a solution, when you said yes to a vendor? What were the things that you were looking for? What made you go, yeah, I'm going to buy from these people, this company?
The biggest, I think, piece of it was they knew my business. the call center space is very vertical driven. So when I was running a contact center for collections, it was collections. And that means the other people out there that are selling other types of technology, they don't know what we do. They don't understand this side of the business. So we're really only going to buy to people that know us and what we do. Same thing with customer service, same thing with customer experience, same thing with fundraising, whatever. So you never wanted to be that first. You never wanted to be that guinea pig to this new tech that maybe don't understand your business. So by me being very well-rounded when it came to my experience in running collection centers, running lead gen, running fundraising, running inbound, running outbound, running sales, it really allowed me to have a conversation with the people that actually are the decision makers that make the contact centers work. They really felt like I really knew what they needed in their business because I was able to talk to them in a way that made sense. I could talk about KPIs. I could talk about pain points. I could talk about, outbound, inbound, call labeling, all these type of things that they all assume is very, very specific to what they do. And it's night and day versus somebody that's just trying to sell you a piece of tech that don't understand your issues, your KPIs. To use the collections as an example, right? Everybody else calls it a CRM. Other people call it, in collections package. People call it a contact. Collections, they call it right party contact. So there's some of these things that going into that conversation, if somebody feels like you really come from their industry and you know it, then it just opens the doors. They feel more comfortable. And I think it's one of the key advantages that I have when I talk to, companies that are looking for new tech and especially the ones that I have a lot of experience in their vertical.
So when we think about, I'm a buyer, I'm working in a contact center or a business, right, that has a department or division that has the need for tech, whatever the tech may be. When you were buying, what were the kinds of mistakes or assumptions that vendors would make when they were trying to sell to you? They just made you go, no, I wouldn't talk to you. Now I get the I don't know your business part. That's obvious, right? If they come to you and you're, let's say in your example, your collections, and it's like, hey, I'd like to talk to all of your agents and I want to understand better around your CRM. And, they just start using all this lingo that has nothing to do with your business. I get that. You don't know their business. But what else? What other things did you run into when people were trying to sell you that you just said, man, I don't understand why tech companies don't know how to sell to me. They waste my time or they don't know me or what I need. Any other examples that you ran into?
Yeah, I think it all starts with the relationship and understanding the person you're talking with, but more importantly, understanding their buying behavior. And so a lot of times in tech, and especially in tech sales, you kind of get I call it the dog and pony show. Hey, let's get on and do a discovery. Oh, next step, we got to do a demo. Oh, next step, let's talk about pricing. And so it's almost like you can anticipate as a buyer kind of the process, but it's a lot of times not your process because not understanding me as the buyer, also you don't understand that maybe I'm only going to do a small POC. Maybe pricing is my key driver. And the last guy that I worked with had a lot of underlining pricing mistakes that really turned me off. Maybe, so I think the first thing is understanding the individual in the company that you're actually talking with, understanding what their buying behavior is versus just trying to push demos down people's throats. I mean, you wouldn't believe every time we get on a demo and then on the side, we're using instant messaging and chatting and we're saying, oh, here comes the big question. And so it was almost comical when, you were dealing with different type of tech companies that really had their process. And then at the end, it gets down to it and you're just like, well, actually, let's talk about this. Let's do it this way. And so I would say the two biggest things that I would recommend is, number one, obviously know the type of company that you're selling to, understand the vertical. And then number two, you have to understand the actual key people in the buying journey and what's important to them. And so if you haven't had that conversation, or you haven't gone that deep into the actual buying process, then, just going through your process of discovery, demo, close, it just, it leads to bad results, because you really don't understand the person that you're talking with, and you don't understand what's important to them.
This is James. James is a contact center manager with a passion for philosophy and hiking. As a kid, he made a promise to himself that he would always follow his passion. Today, he ponders on the thought that this promise is probably the best decision he ever made. Today, James loves his job just as much as he loves hiking. So much that he sometimes brings the scent of fresh pine and the tranquility of the mountain streams back to the office with him. With NobelBiz as his company's provider, James found the necessary peace of mind to finally bridge the gap between his passion and his work. By choosing to partner with the promise-keeping voice and software provider of the industry, contact center technical issues, downtime, and poor customer experience are now a thing of the past. In an industry ruled by uncertainty, NobelBiz combines balanced pricing with the highest quality, topped off with outstanding support. But above all, NobelBiz delivers peace of mind to contact center managers and owners. And for the first time, James hit that sweet spot of focus and confidence that is allowing him to take his business to new heights of profitability and success. After all, you know what they say, promises are the uniquely human way of ordering the future. NobelBiz, the promise keepers of the industry.
Yeah, it's interesting through all the discussions over all the years that we've had, but also, working in companies that consumed products like this versus selling the technology, is a lot of times the approach is very selfish. It's very about what I want to sell, what I want to do, what KPIs are important to me. And I think you were spot on that, yes, you got to obviously know their business and know the industry. But if you don't know who are the stakeholders and what actually is important to them, then you're wasting their time. And I know that people in your role on the operations running business, you don't have time to talk to everybody because they have the next special thing, the next best mousetrap. You have to not only be relevant, but you have to be able to say, how do I not waste your time, and whatever time I do take from you, how do I make it as valuable or more than the exchange of time that I've taken from you? Because let's just be real. Anytime anybody's talking to a vendor, it's an interruption to their day. You're not just sitting around doing nothing and going, well, I wish a vendor would reach out to me, or a prospective vendor reach out to me and make my time useful, right? You're not. We're an interruption. People are interrupting your day to see if we can improve your day. So with that in mind, let's shift a little bit over to just the contact center space overall. You've been in it for a while. What have you seen has evolved in that space? And do you think anything was something that we got wrong in this space from a call center side, running the contact center side, whether it's an internal center or BPOs? It just got it wrong and it needs to change, or things that you believe maybe are going slower than it should, and it should be something that industry should adopt.
Sure. Yeah, I think looking back on the call center, you made a couple really good points when you talk about interrupting their day. First, understanding the resources in a BPO or the resources in a contact center is very important. So as me as a director of a contact center, and everybody's a little different, but for the most part, I'm probably overworked, underpaid, and normally doing multiple jobs. And so when it comes to those interruptions, me having to fill in the details to a salesperson to sell me a product is a problem, right? It's annoying. And so if I have to connect every dot, or I have to go through every single detail that I may, I don't have time for that. So that's where I think I think where you can fill a gap is you fill in those details. So this is what you do. Okay. How do you do it different than how I laid it out? Have you ever thought about doing it this way? So now I'm adding more value to the conversation than even just saying, take what I do today and replicate it. I'm actually adding value as to, have you thought about doing this? Right? How about AI? How about this? How about that? And so now you as a vendor isn't just trying to sell them tech. You're actually helping them with their business. You're actually almost like a consultant that's guiding them down to some stuff that they can do. They didn't even think about it. So I think understanding the call center and just the I call it managing chaos, right? That's what you do every day. You walk in and you manage chaos. That could be as a supervisor, it could be as a director, it could be as a president of a BPO. You're managing chaos. And so within that chaos, there's some things you have to understand. Number one, the contact center is a people business. Our product are agents. That's the product. And so as you manage people, you manage behaviors. As you manage behaviors, there's a lot of things that are going to happen throughout a day in a contact center that as a leader, you have to roll with. You have to be able to adjust and to pivot and all these type of things of running those contact centers. And so, looking at how the contact center evolved from 30 years ago to where it is today, there's been some things that's really helped and really elevated on the technology side. So use the example of cloud solutions. So back in the day, we used to open call centers in all these different areas because you were limited to the people in that call center in that town on those campaigns. There was no environment to where you could just have 50 people in 50 states log into your same platform. That tech was not there. You had punch boards in the call center. You had servers and dialers that lived in the call center, and you were only as good as your talent in that call center. And so I couldn't even take the 5 call centers I have and take my best agents out of all 5 and put them in the same campaign. Just technology, there was no technology to do that. So as technology evolved, also has brought up other issues. So let's use cloud for an example. Now all of a sudden cloud comes in, and now we can do exactly what I just said. We can take these agents and we can put agents all over these other offices onto the same campaign. Well, now somebody's got to manage all them. So before in the call center, I could just tap you on the shoulder, Christian, and say, hey, come here, man, let's have a conversation. Or I could shut down the dialer and pump up the floor, get a 15, 20% increase in results. I could manage it very easily myself. Once cloud came, now comes some other issues where how am I going to manage John in Indianapolis, Illinois, and I'm in Texas effectively at the same performance that I'm managing my guys? So that was one of the hurdles that came into with cloud technology. Then you start creating at-home agents. So now with the cloud technology, very quickly I pivoted and said, guys, why are we in these small towns for 10 years and just turning through the bottom of the barrel of employees? Why don't we send these guys home, go open another call center, or start recruiting remotely? Great idea. You can get the best of the best all throughout the United States. You can go into areas that have lower cost, so you can offer your wages carry more. Well, again, now you have a challenge with how do I manage these people, right? And this is prior to COVID even, right? Are they going to sit on a call Are we just going to have a bridge? Am I going to have little hubs where I have managers that may be managing them? So as technology has came in to help, it's also created other operational nightmares. And today, let's look at where we're at today. COVID hits, everybody go home. Now today they're sitting there, and what people won't tell you is when everybody went home, performance dropped, right? They lost productivity. It's going to happen, right? No matter what tools you have, if I have somebody in front of me and I can motivate them, I can talk to them, I can pull them off, I can do this, I'm making decisions much faster. I can create games, contests to increase performance. And when they're remote, you have some type of lag. Onboarding's longer, so on and so forth. So now COVID hits, everybody's remote. You have a dip in performance. And what do? That's where they live today. So you can try to force them all to come back to the call center, right? Well, now you're competing nationwide with employees. Everybody's looking nationwide for agents. So either you got to pay more or you got to let them work remote if you want that talent. So now you got to come up with ways of how do I manage them if they're remote to get that performance, to get that performance back. And it's across the board. It could be an inbound, could be outbound, could be in sales, it could be in lead gen, doesn't matter. So then technology said, hey, we got tools. We got stuff that can help gamification. We got other tools that can help keep agents on camera so you can monitor and watch them. So it's interesting to watch how technology evolves, things happen, and then you have other operational issues that come out, and then you have to fix those. But I will tell you what makes me super excited is this next version of contact centers, which is how do we merge AI, offshore, onshore, and give the customer what they're looking for. Could be speed, could be quick with AI, could be cost. I want to work with a brand that's cheaper, so I'm going to use this. Or it could be I'm willing to pay a premium if I'm going to talk to an onshore agent that understands my community, whatever, so on and so forth.
You know, there's a lot to unpack there, and I know we could have conversations forever, but one thing that kind of struck me is, your experiences had working in-house centers, working in BPOs, outsourcing, and you're talking about the dynamic of, having different centers, the advent of tech and disruption, and we'll talk a little bit about AI in a minute, but I'd like to kind of talk for a moment on when you were working in-house in a center, at what point did it make sense for an in-house center to actually outsource, or for a business that shouldn't even have an in-house center from day one and should outsource? And when you were on the outsourcing side, how did you convince businesses to say this makes sense for you to do? You should be outsourcing, and not necessarily to go deep into offshore versus near shore and everything else, but just the idea of when a business is saying, how should I scale and still do it right, still keep the culture, how to still get results? What kind of things went through your mind when you were doing that on both ends?
Yeah, so I've done it both ways. So I've had internal operations where we might needed more capacity, meaning we have more work than what we could do internally. And that was normally the reason to look to offshore. And then when you look at that, what can you offshore? So I'll give you an example. Fundraising space, election season, right? So all of a sudden the election season happens. We have a huge influx of get out the vote calls. We have a huge influx of caller ID, all these type of calls now that we normally would be able to manage with our in-house team. Times that by 1 million during an election cycle. So we know it's not if, it's when we have to outsource. But then it's also to look at what can you outsource, meaning what is it internally that has to have an internal expertise to be able to do certain tasks versus what can I take, I can offshore it, I know I can get results on it, and I can grow and expand. So in the political space, that was always very driven based off election cycle, every 2 years, every 4 years. And when I mean volume, I'm talking internally. Let's say we did 1,000 hours a day, man hours, call center agent hours, to where we had the volume to do 20,000 hours a day, right? So either you say, I don't want that volume of those calls to handle, or you figure out how to bring in outsource partners to be able to still achieve the similar results that you would if you had it internal. And then now you can increase that capacity that you have to do those type of calls. So that's kind of one very specific scenario that we used outsourcing every 2 and 4 years. Now, the other scenario would be internally, I can't recruit no more, right? I'm in a town, I'm recruiting, things are well, but I just want to expand. I need more agents. I'm bringing in 20 people. Maybe I'm only keeping 3 or 4. My turnover is high, and maybe the area that I'm in just doesn't have the talent I need. In that case, I can look outside of my area, my talent, and look to offshore or be able to bring in other partners, outsource them to be able to accomplish some of that with different areas and agents. And that's really when the first outsourcing came really alive at that time is can I get other people to do the same thing I am doing internally, but now I can expand this to more talent. I can expand this to save cost. Maybe I have a call center in New York City and my agents are 25, 30 bucks an hour. Now I have an opportunity to maybe bring in a campaign, but I can only pay 10 or 15 an hour on this campaign and make it work. Well, in that case, I can go find an offshore or an onshore or a outsource partner that's able to accomplish those tasks for me at that lower rate. And I'm able to, still be able to bring that revenue into the organization. So that was kind of when I've had direct experience of, I need to make a decision here. Either I turn down this business or I find a way outside of my internal operations to bring that in.
When it comes to once you've made a decision, you're running your business, and you said earlier something that I think is just really important, is you're in the people business. The product is your people. How do you get call center agents and the supervisors and management to be engaged, right? How do you get them to buy into the culture of excellence? Or is that not the case? It's just, we got a certain dollar to hit, we got to do whatever we can to hit whatever KPI that we need to for that thing, and then we check the box and we move on. Any insight into what were the drivers of performance, and also from the client experience perspective, were they ever at odds, or was there always alignment between performance and serving the customer the best?
I mean, let's face it, a call center agent's a hard job, right? It's probably one of the hardest jobs I've did. I did it when I was young. I would be lying to you if I could say, hey, Mike, I'm going to go hop on the phones tomorrow and go make it happen, right? I know what that takes to do that, and the level of energy and what you have to do to pull that off. And I'm not interested in that. But what I am interested in is, how do we manage people like that? And how do we find people that want to do that? That's where the first key is. When you're recruiting and you're interviewing and you're bringing people into your contact center, you have to find the right characteristics, right? If somebody is a certain way, are they competitive? Do they play sports? Are they a musician? Are they X, Y, and Z? So I put together an entire list of these profiles based off of our current staff that are amazing, that perform, that come in every day, that aren't attendance problems. So that's what I did, is I made a internal checklist that says these type of personalities excel in what we want to do. And so it all started at the recruiting phase. I didn't bring in anybody that didn't fit certain personalities, because I've already known, we've already done through trial and error or whatever, that these types of personalities just don't like this job. Even though they may need a job, they don't like it. They're not open to making call after call. They're not open to getting told no and people being belligerent. So that's kind of the first step is what type of employee are you bringing in? What type of employee can you screen to make sure that at least they're connecting most of those boxes? Now let's say we got this employee, they fit the mold. We're bringing them into our operations. Now, how do we get them to perform? I think there's two key ingredients. One is lead by example, and it's always worked for me, especially in any sales job. So think about it. The first contact center I ran, I was 19 years old. Almost every single employee underneath me was older than I was. So I got an issue here. They're like, who's this young punk? What's he going to say? And I heard him. Nobody told me it, but you felt it. And so how did I overcome that challenge? I took $100 bill out every Friday and I put it on the desk. And I said, we're going to take 10 phone calls. Out of these 10 phone calls, if you beat me, you get that $100. Right? And it was an open challenge every single Friday. And I won every single Friday. But everybody stepped up. The one guy that was naturally killing, or the one lady that was naturally destroying everybody. Go get Mike. So that was one very good technique that I learned, was lead by example, because it was a very short process of them saying, man, he's young, but we can learn from him and we'll make a lot of money if we do what he tells us. So that was my first natural way I was able to motivate people, is lead by example. Do what I say, you'll be successful. Do what I do, and you'll be able to make it happen. So that was easy when I was running a call center. So I was able to say, hey, supervisors, watch me. I'm going to go work this section. I'm going to go motivate them. I'm going to take calls for these guys. I'm going to get them to listen and learn because I'm really good at what they do. And they're going to listen to me because I'm good at what they do. Now, the natural challenge is when Mike McGuire had to manage 8 call centers outside of him being able to directly put somebody on his shoulder and say, watch this. And that's when I really learned how to duplicate. Before then, I would just do it. I had the capacity. Hey, just sit down and watch this. Hey, just watch what I do. So then I had to learn and put things in process of, how do we manage people? How do we get people motivated? And so I put together what I called a coaching process. In that coaching process was a natural way of talking to an agent. Meet, greet, ask and inform associations examples, demonstrate, role play, follow up. And so I taught that process almost like it was a McDonald's, right? You had fries are here, burgers are here. I trained that process. And so all my managers knew how to communicate with their agents, how to sit down with an agent, how to talk with them, give them examples, how to make calls for them so they believe that you know what you're talking about, and then how to role play and make sure that they're following that. So all my coaches followed this playbook. They followed this coaching process. And it allowed me to take the things that I learned from trial and error and duplicate that into the organization, especially on the frontline supervisors.
Yeah, it's great to be able to hear your journey on how you were able to do this, and maybe others can take from that and see how they're doing it, maybe take some nuggets from it. Now, we see a lot of implementations. You've seen a lot as a buyer, and you've seen a lot as a tech expert, right? We often see adoption of products, new technologies over the years, right? Predictive dialing, omni-channel or multi-channel. Prior to that, you had people that, like you said, gamification, workforce management, you have AI now. Before we dive into AI though, what are some things that you're seeing that companies really just have to do internally as a company when they say, I'm going to go adopt new tech for it to be successful? What are the things you're seeing that just, if you do X, you're going to fail. If you do Y, you just have a higher likelihood of having less pain and having this thing be more successful when you adopt it, whatever tech it may be?
Sure. No, good question. and I've done it wrong more than I've done it right. And so I've learned, especially when it was me bringing on new technology. So when I did it wrong, it was my decision, or maybe one other person. We scoped it, we looked at it, we implemented it, we brought it in, and then we dictated everybody else needs to adopt to this. Challenging. Nobody wants change. Nobody was bought in. It wasn't their decision. It was from Mike. Mike made the decision. We have to do this. This system sucks. So what did I do? I put together a team. So anytime we were going to vet any new technology, it wasn't Mike's decision or Mike's right-hand person. It was a committee, and it was a person from every part of the org. Obviously Mike, obviously somebody from ops, HR, supervisor, and agent. Agent. We had a trusted agent that's been with us a long time, that is a leader of agents. And that was our committee. Brought together tech. We would filter it. Don't get me wrong. I didn't make every decision with this group, but we would get it down to a few. And then we had a committee and we'd discuss it. We talk about options and so on and so forth. And every single person on that committee said, this is a good idea. So just by adjusting that, now I got buy-in, you've signed off on this, you feel like it's a good idea. When you go to implement, now you have helpers. It's not just Mike's decision, it's our decision. Yeah, it is a little rough here, but they're working on it, says the leader of agents. Yeah, I know, but here's the ultimate plan of how it's going to help us long-term, says the supervisor. And then ultimately, HR, CFO says, hey, financially, this is really going to help us out. So let's make this work. So that committee changed my life anytime I would bring in new tech. And so that's one of the biggest suggestions. Never do these decisions in a silo to where you're forcing decisions onto people that have to really manage your decisions that you're making and sell it at every level as the right thing to do. So that was a game changer. And so normally when I'm talking to customers and they have multiple people that are involved, you ask, who does reporting? You ask, who handles like your telecom, your DIDs, your call management? You ask, can we get the CFO on the call? Why? Because if you can create that same group that I used to use as decision makers as the buying process, as somebody selling them tech, now you're getting the same sign off. Everybody is along for the ride. Everybody has made a decision and said, this is a good idea. And you don't have those people that are roadblocks. So, that's the best scenario that I've done it and how it's worked and how I see it successful on both sides.
I think you're spot on that the committee, or at least stakeholder, not only from having a stakeholder, but stakeholder ownership from the beginning to the end. Because what ends up happening is you may have someone's opinion into a situation, but you don't actually have any ownership of who owns the success of this implementation, of this project actually doing something. And then also knowing what it's supposed to do. A lot of times we just see people buy technology, implement technology, and they don't even know why they're doing it. Holistically, they don't know exactly what they're measuring to know if this was worthy of the change, right? Maybe it's the new shiny object, which we'll talk about next with AI. But when you look at processes as an example, or how people run their business, a lot of times it's in their head, sometimes it's in siloed processes. But when you go to implement new tech, do you see any disconnect between when you go to say, here's how I run my business, that there's gaps between what you're actually saying you do and actually what happens? And that's where also implementations fail, is people don't fully know everything that happens and how it needs to happen in the business.
Yeah, in the call center operations, one of the biggest challenges is a lot of the processes are built around the tech that they have. And a lot of the reporting and a lot of the way that they do business is really built around that very specific piece that they kind of started with. And so the challenge is to get that. Remember, we already said contact centers are overtasked. They're running by a little bit of the seat of their own pants. So they don't have just things laid out. Like when I was in a call center, I couldn't say, oh, hey, Christian, I'm glad I'm switching my CCAS. Here's everything you need to know. Here's your manual, right? Reporting, ops, dashboards, dialer, inbound, IVR. None of that exists. So on the tech side, it's filling in the gaps. Asking the right questions are so important because there's going to be things that they just don't know. They just don't have documented. They just kind of do it, that when you get into implementation, always fails, always is a hang up, always creates the log jam or frustration or friction points. So, I think that's one area to understand is if you understand the call center business, you understand where their shortcut, where they fail. And usually where they fail is documenting. They fail at having that information where they can now reduplicate it. So as a good tech company, it's important for two things. Number one, if you're going to help them go through this journey, you should also help them document it, right? This is what we did. Even afterwards, hey guys, this is the implementation, right? This is how we went through it. And then the other piece is know where they're going to fall short and help overcome that with the right questions. So if somebody calls back that number, what are you going to have happen? Well, I needed to come back to this campaign, or I needed to come to an IVR. I needed to on and on and on. Well, if you didn't ask that question, they would just be like, yeah, we just need an IVR. Okay, well, we have an IVR. So I think that's really important, is to kind of understand the call center and how that dynamics is, and even more importantly, where they're falling short.
No, it makes total sense. So let's kind of on the tech side end with the buzzword AI. But let's kind of focus on where it's being used or where you see it being used, maybe where the opportunity is. There's a lot of discussion about how AI is going to replace all agents and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you got an opinion on that. But is anybody implementing AI successfully in the call center? If so, where? Maybe where is it falling short? It's a lot to unpack, but kind of wrap around all the stuff you're seeing right now in this space.
Sure. Yes, to answer the question, there's lots of AI being adopted, and I'll kind of roll through where the biggest areas that I see it. AI naturally came out as an easy replacement for an IVR, right? It's smart. It's more conversational. It may allow you to get more data points than the old cumbersome press 1, press 2, press 3 IVR. So that's a very easy, natural place to have AI. Now you have something that is smarter. It can have a conversation versus pressing 1 to go to departments. You could have a large database attached to it that can pull this information very quickly instead of an agent saying, hang on, let me go look. So replacing that inbound IVR process, no brainer. People are using it. It's a smart IVR, or you could call it AI, and it gives them a much better customer experience. Now kind of dive into how do we defer call volume in an inbound queue? That's where I kind of look at the next step of AI. So before, you've called the airport, you've called the airlines, all of a sudden they say you got a 20-minute wait, right? Now, instead of the 20-minute wait, AI is able to help you. They can walk you through maybe a flight change. They can help you do X, Y, and Z. You could do a web chat. And now AI is able to have a chat bot. It can walk you through certain self-service tools. And now you can have a conversation without having to have a human. And it can deflect some calls. You can do web chat, all this type of stuff with chatbots. And then finally, I would say QA, QM. So if you're never really involved in a contact center, there's usually a team behind the scenes that's listening to calls, that's giving grades to agents, that's trying to make sure that what we've signed off to the customer that we're going to do for them, we're actually doing, and that we're achieving those statistics. So now AI has come along and it's allowed you to listen to all calls real time, to be able to make adjustments real time. versus now you were kind of, or old, you used to have to rely on agents to listen. Maybe they get 10% of the calls, so on and so forth. So now AI can digitize all these calls. They can go through all these calls in seconds and then be able to point out certain things that might be important to your business. Did they skip a legal disclosure? Did they say the person's first name? Did they cuss on the phone? Like a lot of these things that you normally would have to have humans listening for, now AI can accomplish those tasks very quickly. And it can be real time, and you can make adjustments. Also goes into coaching and developing. So since AI is listening all the time, we're monitoring calls all the time. Now I can also guide maybe this agent on what to say, how to rebuttal, how to talk to the customer, real time. And that's where Agent Assist comes in, right? All of a sudden they hear the objection. I don't have any money right now in fundraising. Well, this agent over here is converting really high. And by them saying, I don't have any money, they say, John, I understand times are rough, right? Let's say it's around Christmas. I don't want to be the Grinch that stole Christmas. Let me do this. And then they go down this rebuttal. Well, if that's highly successful, I can take that now and I can give it to all agents that are running into those same issues. So those are kind of the areas that I see as easy lifts for AI. Why not? Why not have a better IVR? Why not have agent bots that can help with deflecting queue times? Why not have a QA all the time, monitoring calls, adjusting, giving you feedback immediately, and giving information to agents? So that's the area that I see it like happening today. Now, where did everybody want it to happen? What's AI of the future that everybody wants? As somebody that owned, ran, and operated a contact center, I would love AI to replace agents. Why? Because that's my biggest cost. I am in the people business. And so my people is what generates revenue for me and my call center. So now if I can pay AI at a fraction of the cost, and you say I can accomplish, let's just say they're not doing it any better. They can just accomplish the same tasks. They can hit the same KPIs, so on and so forth as this human. I'm all in as an owner. I'm all in tomorrow, right? But that's going to be the challenge is what does that look like? So if you're in sales, you're telling me that AI can negotiate, it can rebuttal, it can understand tone, it can have a conversation, maybe off the cuff to get somebody bought into you. So I think that's the next step of AI. All the stuff we laid out before, that they're doing it today. That's stuff that you can do now, and I think you should be doing. Replacing the agent in certain scenarios is going to be tough, right? And the other thing that's tough about it is I think we're not ready for it. Meaning, when I call an IVR, you know what I still do? Supervisor, supervisor, supervisor. I don't even want to deal with AI. Why? Because I want to talk to this human, because I feel like still today that they can accomplish my issues within fractions of the time. That I don't want to play this game. I don't want to go through all these steps just to be on a 30-minute call with a human anyways. So that's kind of where I see it. Now, people are using it for other ways as well. Like, let's look at lead generation. Forever, agents were paid to qualify leads. It's just a qualification. Hey, do you still live here? Do you still make this? Do you still da-da-da-da? And now they want AI to be able to ask those and send that to a buyer. Well, I think it can in some scenarios. I think in some scenarios, they're going to hang up on the transfer because they don't think it's real. Anybody could have done an AI bot. Anybody could have sent this to me. So now you're asking me for my social security number. Now you're asking me for my credit card number, and you're just a bot. How do I know you're not from another country? How do I even know this is real? So I think the consumer plays a big role into adopting AI as well in the future. Are we going to adapt? Is our behavior going to say, hey, I'm going to welcome this and I'm going to go through it? And so, I mean, that's not even counting the elderly and, you know, that other group of people. So hopefully that answered your question. That's kind of what I see today and how I feel the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could have a whole episode on just AI, right? With all the things we're seeing, what's working, what's not working, companies that are here yesterday that aren't here tomorrow, and so on and so forth. But with that said, in consideration of time, I do want to end on some personal stuff. I know outside of work, you have passions. If anyone who has ever followed you on LinkedIn probably understands this, but help me understand what you do outside of work to disconnect from work, or even it impacts how you work. I know that you're big into performance in the athletic space, so I'd love to kind of have you share that story real quick around what you're doing and how you're disconnecting from work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we did a little bit on my 30 years of experience in the contact center. Very high stress environment, right? About 15, 16 years ago, I woke up, I was 320 pounds. Went to a Vietnamese lady, doctor, she just screamed at me. You're going to die. You're going to have a heart attack. What are you doing? So me and my wife, basically, we lived next to a Lifetime Fitness, and we did join this 90-day challenge. Well, long story short, I lost 110 pounds in 90 days. And that company, Lifetime Fitness, decided to kind of sponsor us, wanted us to do these triathlons and all this type of stuff. And it really gave me a new lease on life, to where before, drank alcohol to suppress the demons, did everything besides the most healthy ways to be able to deal with stress. And so I fell in love with this endurance, this Ironman training, this ultra endurance running and biking that has really changed my life. Number one, I quit drinking. Number two, I am almost depression free. Number three, it makes me much more healthy to be around and gives me energy to give to everybody every day. And so today I've completed 4 full Ironman triathlons, 2.4 mile swim, 112 bike, 26.2 run. And then I've done 7, 8 halves and then some crazy mountain bike races. But that's what I personally do. And I love to let people know that there's still time for your health. I'm a full-time CRO. I'm a full-time traveling sales guy. I'm a full-time father of 4, 2 grandbabies. And I still find time to do Ironman training. And so normally when I help others, it's all around time management. It's all around you have to find time for what you believe in, which me is health and controlling and being able to put myself on a good foot every day. So that's what I do personally. And I think honestly, it's changed my life. I think anybody that is battling maybe like stress, battling, depression, that type of stuff, look at fitness, look at endurance. I think I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice, but it certainly has changed my life for the positive.
Yeah, and I think, for those that have followed you online and can see the before after pictures, being able to see not only that transformation, but also from a personal branding standpoint, just the personality you drive, obviously your jackets, you're known for your jackets. I know we could probably have a whole nother episode on personal branding and understanding your own way into the world. So look, I want to leave with these 2 items. One is for our next guest that comes onto the show, what kind of thought-provoking question would you like for them to be able to answer? Anything come to mind?
I mean, I think it's interesting, the show format on, why and you've chose, call center, contact center. I like that origin story, right? I think it's important to dive into it. And I think the other thing is, explaining a little bit more of the weeds of, your journey, because that's what I get out of it. Like, with me, talking with you and then talking to Steve and George and other people, when they talk to me about their journey of where they were and how they got here, most people don't know your story about being in the firearms and the audio stereo. And now you're in a technology contact center business. That is a very interesting story. So I think, to future guests, I think just share your story, share how you got from where you're at to where you're at today. And if anybody else is like me, that is super motivating and interesting. And it really helps, I think, people listening to understand you better. And more importantly, they can get some nuggets out of there. How can I adapt that to my life? How can maybe I'm at this point and I want to be where you're at. And so what journey did you follow that I can also adapt? So I would just say that. I'd say, talk about your journey, talk about, some of the details and some of the big tipping points that, maybe you had to make a decision, or maybe you went all in on something. You said, hey, I got to go all in. This is it. I used my last credit card. I did this and I have no other choice. I took out loans for everything. Like, talk about those stories. I enjoy them. I'm sure there's others that enjoy that stuff.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining the show today. I know there's going to be people that haven't connected with you. How can they best do that?
LinkedIn's usually the best, right? So I'm on LinkedIn, Michael McGuire, NobleBiz, usually where most people, but I'm going to be at shows as well. So you'll see Crazy Jackets. We're going to be at Contact.io here at the end of the month. That's in Denver. We got Lynn 360. We got some other shows coming up. So if you're going to be around at any of the contact center shows, love to connect. Even if we're going to grab a coffee and you just want to, ask me different things about your contact center or your experience, love to help out any place I can.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining, Mike. Hopefully everybody got some great nuggets from today's conversation. If you enjoyed it, though, check out our other episodes. We have plenty. We also would love for you to subscribe and see what's coming next. So until next time, I'm Christian, and thanks for joining First Contact Stories of the Call Center.
Thank you.